So we talked last week a little bit about retreat, deep retreat, and how it's in retreat you get these great ideas that bubble up to the surface, and that it's important to kind of, when you get out of retreat, and they seem really stupid, to still kind of act on those ideas. Like Earle had this idea to do ACIP and in retreat, one of his first lay-rungs, one of his first deep retreats, and then when he got out of retreat, he's like, that's impossible. And now there's millions of pages of Tibetan text saved. So I had this great idea in retreat that I'm going to teach for an hour and a half on the first word of the Yoga Sutras. And then I got out of retreat, I was like, well, that's stupid. But I phoned Mishi, I talked to Amanda, I was like, kind of said, I'm going to do this thing, and got off the phone. I was like, really? I am? So I decided to stick with that, and so I went to the Yoga Sutras and opened up the book and looked at the first word, and the first word is Atta. I said, okay. And went to the Sanskrit dictionary and looked up the first word, what Atta means, and it means now. So the first word of the Yoga Sutras is Atta, and Atta means now. Now. So I guess I'll write it. You can see what it looks like. Something like that. That's the short A and Ta. Oh, doesn't look quite right. Anyone know Sanskrit? It's a Ta. So it's an aspirated Ta. Atta. Atta means now. So the Yoga Sutras, let's backtrack a little bit. The Yoga Sutras was written around 200 AD, so 1800 years ago-ish, by a guy named Patanjali. And he kind of took a whole bunch of common ideas that were floating around the spiritual soup of India and made a text that became kind of like the seminal text for yoga philosophy. It wasn't the first, it's certainly not the oldest, but it kind of became the Bible of yoga. So when you talk about yoga philosophy, that's kind of the starting point, so much so that if you don't study that in your yoga teacher training, you might not get your yoga teacher training certificate, as Hillary found out. Right? They didn't cover that book, and they're like, well, that's not a certified program then. So it's that core to yoga philosophy. And it came at a really interesting time where there was a whole bunch of ideas. Around 500 BC, there were some great spiritual thinkers, and they were, like the Buddha, for instance, spouting out his ideas, and but it wasn't around 200 AD that the ideas kind of started taking some sort of formation, like the Abhidharma Kosha, or a little bit later Maitreya and Sangha, mind-only school. Right around then, Samkhya philosophy was really fully developed by Bhagavad Krishna. So it was like a really powerful time that this text was written. And it's a very short aphorismic text. So, like for instance, the first verse, we're going to get ahead of ourselves. First verse is Atta Yoga. Say Atta. Atta Yoga.
Yoga.
Anushasanam.
Anushasanam.
Atta Yoga.
Atta Yoga.
Anushasanam.
Anushasanam.
So Atta means yoga means yoga. Shasanam comes from the Sanskrit root shas, S-A-S, and it means to instruct. Anu implies like a continuation. So it's like a continuation of a teaching. So the first line of the Yoga Sutra says, now yoga, I'm going to teach. Or it's not even that, it's now yoga teaching. And that's kind of how the book's written. I think there's 3 verbs in the whole book. It's just very short and direct and pithy. Now yoga teaching. Okay? So ata means now, like now I'm going to teach yoga. Kind of what it means is that there's like, it's a continuation of a teaching. Like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras fits into a framework that you wouldn't necessarily just start with his book, the Yoga Sutras. So there's other yogas you would study first. So now is like, and now. It's not, it's like, now that you've done some other stuff, Yoga Sutras. So what's the other stuff? The other stuff is some of the different kinds of yoga that hopefully some people are somewhat familiar with. So what are other kinds of yoga?
You mean like the pranayama, or do you mean like the non-violence type of use of the 8 limbs?
I'm going to say that's part of Patanjali's yoga. Karma yoga.
Hatha yoga.
Hatha yoga.
Bhakti
yoga. Okay, cool. So those are other kinds of yoga. So where do those all fit in the progression of how do I do a yoga practice? One way to talk about it, and this is how I was introduced to it at the Shivananda ashram in the Bahamas by Swami Swarupananda, who is amazing. He's one of the best teachers I've ever seen or heard in my life. And if you at all want to go and learn yoga philosophy at a nice spot, it's an amazing place. So he said you first start with seva. Seva means service. Just like start by serving people. It's just, when I was at the ashram, I worked in the kitchen and served people food. So that was my seva. I went and served food. And it's just simply the idea of serving others. So you want to start your spiritual program? Don't start with the yoga Patanjali, start with just simply serving some people. Because we kind of I go around my day. There's a punk rock band I used to listen to called Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. I don't know if anybody knows. But I really like that, and it's one of my favorite names, Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, because that's how I live my life. I wake up and I'm like, have I had enough sleep? Yeah, no, okay, I go back to sleep. I wake up, I wonder if someone emailed me, or I'll take care of my body, or what should I do today? Worry about my stomach. Kind of go about my day, and my day is centered on me. Me. So what's wrong with that?
Everything.
Everything? Because
if everybody walks around in the world just focusing on themselves, we'd all be isolated islands, and so, yeah.
Anyone else have other ideas?
We won't get happy.
We won't get happy if we think about ourselves. I say there's anyone else? What's wrong with me thinking about me?
Nothing really wrong.
I totally agree. Nothing. It's great. It's functional. I kind of have to think about me to get through it's logical. It's practical. Nothing wrong with that. I kind of need to go through my day thinking about me. That's okay. According to Earle's philosophy on life, which is all I'm trying, I don't pretend to represent Patanjali so well, but for me, that's okay. It's It's okay to think about me. But the problem is, there is a problem, is there's one of me and 9 billion other people. And so I kind of go through my day worrying about the one person instead of, there are a few other people in the world that I could worry about. You know, like the pendulum can switch a little bit. You know, I do need to think about me, but there's probably room to think about 9 billion other people. You know, I can even my attention out a little bit and think of some other people. And it kind of feels good. Like serving people, you know, when I do it, one of the reasons I think we do it is because it just kind of feels good. It's one of the ways that they cure depression. People that are very depressed are very self-absorbed and obsessed with themselves. And so if you can get someone to think about other people, it's a cure for depression. Get out and help somebody. I think we feel that, like I was talking to my brother, and he was saying part of, you know, him and a group of people manage a $50 billion fund. So a lot of people give them money, and it's important to them. It's like $50 billion. Like, don't this up. You know, like, it's a lot of money. So there's some pressure to, like, you know, not lose 30 of it. Don't lose 30 billion, you know. So there's kind of some pressure there, I would imagine. And but he was telling me that he takes time out on that job to mentor some people that are kind of like up and coming business people who want to get in banking and investments. So part of what he does is takes time out of his life to go and mentor people, because that's service, that's seva, and you do it, it feels good. No one's like, you know, you don't always get a pat on the back for it. But for me, like when I go teach in a prison, I leave and I'm so uplifted. It's such a, there's something about serving others that feels good. So that's seva. I was talking to, I think, John at the end of the last Wednesday's class, and you know, I get my 5 minutes of fame getting to come and be the teacher, and I'm talking to John, and he's kind of like the other big, you know, he's a big teacher here, and you know, we're like feeling like a hot shot a little bit, and we're talking about this big, cool 2-day fire puja we're gonna do. And I noticed someone had just cleaned the whole kitchen, and quietly, and was taking out the garbage. And I kind of was like, oh, like that person that's kind of who I want to be. Like, it felt like that person was doing something very spiritual. They're just quietly, anonymously doing it, and I kind of got the impression they always were the ones doing it. It's like, I want to be like Alvaro. Like, I just kind of want to think about other people. And there's something very, it feels good. So, spiritual career starts with, maybe it just starts with anonymously washing the cups and taking out the garbage and serving people. And getting away from me first and the gimme-gimmes constantly. Me first and the gimme-gimmes are good. That's functional, that's good. But one of me and 8 billion other people, there's room for a little seva. So that's the start. And then, and we're working up to Patanjali, right? So we start with taking out the garbage. And then there's, Swamiji described it, karma yoga. So what's the difference between karma yoga and seva? Seva's just like, it's kind of just like dumbass service. Like, you're just not really, you're just doing it. Whereas karma yoga, there's an understanding of, I'm doing this thing and I'm gonna get some sort of payback. It's like there's some cognizance of the idea of karma, where I'm gonna work in the kitchen and I'm gonna give somebody bread, and I'm going to plant some seed in my mind that's going to ripen as me having a perception of food. Something very basic, some basic understanding of karma. I'm going to do something that's going to come back to me. I'm going to clean up. I'm going to live in a clean environment. So karma yoga is, it's the understanding that we walk around with this camcorder shooting out of our alleged third eye. It's like constantly camcordering what I do, what I say, what I think. Like there's something in my mind that's constantly on, constantly recording my actions, my speech, my thoughts, and then somehow that's recording that in some sort of karmic seed, a samskara, that's staying in my mind, in my chitta, that's going to ripen into my perception of reality. And how all that magical thing works, that is a big debate between different philosophical schools. But like having some basic idea that I perceive myself doing something is going to affect my perception of the world. So karma yoga, there's some sort of vague to profound understanding of that. As you do your actions, I'm doing this action, I understand there's going to be some sort of reward. Okay? Like a very basic understanding, or an understanding of my generosity is going to have an influence on my perception of wealth. If I'm generous with my time or my speech or my energy or my resources, some magical way that's going to, when I go look at my bank account, if I see 800,000 or 80,000 or 8,000, I'm going to have a perception of having enough. If I live generously, I'm going to have enough. So I used to, I can relate to this a little bit. I remember most of my life, if I became a thousandaire, I was like, I made it. I got $1,000. Like everything is cool. I can kind of relax now. I know where rent's coming from. I could even quit my job. I'm a thousandaire. Like I have a very low level of perception of what is enough. For most of my, I'm changing a little bit, but for a lot of my life, like I'm a thousandaire. I had this perception of that's cool. I'm doing pretty well. And so yoga philosophy says that's from an attitude of generosity. Proving that is difficult. Having some sort of that understanding is karma yoga. So the first one is? Second one is? Third one is? Swamiji called it Bhakti Yoga, but he called it Bhakti Infused Karma Yoga. Okay? So what is Bhakti? Devotion? Sure. Sorry?
That's how I understand it.
Okay. I mean, I'm sure we could generate lots of ideas, but devotion, that sounds good. Devotion to what?
Do something good. Something better. Something really awesome.
Devotion to something good. My burrito was good.
Yeah.
So I suspect it has to be more awesome than my burrito. Bhakti, burrito bhakti. That's a song for you, John. Anyone else? Bhakti.
Teacher.
Teacher?
Devotion to your teacher.
Yeah, okay. Devotion to a teacher. I think traditionally in yoga they might even say devotion to a deity. Bhakti infused karma yoga, Swamiji talked about as that. More like, and Patanjali is he's not atheistic, but he doesn't, what's the word? He doesn't align himself with Vishnu or Krishna or he's very asecular, is that the word? He's like, he doesn't align himself with anybody, so it's very non-denominational. But there is a concept of theism in the Yoga Sutras, and that's a huge debate. You could write your doctorate on theism in the Yoga Sutras. But he says, the idea of Bhakti-infused karma yoga is you do an action, and you offer the result, there's going to be a result, I understand that, and you offer that to whoever you have bhakti towards. So you offer that to God. You know, I gave somebody 20 bucks, that's going to come back to me as a perception of having enough, or it's going to come back to me as 50 bucks. I offer that to God. I offer that to like a higher good. Like I don't even want that reward. Like I want this deed to be totally selfless. I don't even want to get muddled up by being generous because I'm going to get something out of it. Like that's a little sketchy. I don't want that. I'm just going to offer it to God. And then in the yoga tradition, Ishvara, sometimes it's called the great distributor. So there's this idea of Ishvara. So all of this goodness kind of goes into this cosmic pool of goodness. And then some dude is at the top, kind of dishing out the proceeds of your good actions. So if I do something good, I offer the goodness to God, God's going to figure out who needs 20 bucks. Or a kick in the ass. And so the universe will provide for you what you need. You don't have to try to get involved. Just have devotion, have some bhakti, and then get out of the way. The universe will provide what you need. Ishvara, the great distributor, will sort you out. Don't worry about it. So Buddhism is a little different in that respect. Buddhism is like you can't remove yourself from that equation. You do something, you're going to get the result. For better and for worse. The yoga tradition is it's one of the differences, it's a little different. And Swamiji was funny, he said, because Geshe-la went and taught at the ashram, you know, he always teaches about ice cream. You want ice cream, to get ice cream to go through into my mouth, I have to put ice cream in someone else's mouth. In order for me to have ice cream, I need to give some of it away. For me to have a perception of ice cream, I need to create that seed for me to have ice cream by giving ice cream away. Right? That's kind of our party line, right? Swamiji's like, that's stupid. You know, like, if I have to get ice cream by giving it away, then I give it to somebody, and then if they have to get ice cream by giving it away, they're going to give it to someone else, and then if they want ice cream, then they have to give it away to someone. He's like, you're just all going to get ice cream on your hands, and no one's ever going to eat it. It's going to melt. It's like, just get the ice cream, offer it to God, and then eat it. So, spiritual path, A to Z. First step, take out the garbage. Second step, karma, give away ice cream. Third step, bhakti, give it to God, or however you want to conceptualize that. Fourth step, Raja Yoga. What's Raja Yoga? Listening right. Just got ideas.
Royal.
So Raja means royal. You could translate it as. What does it mean?
You mean like wisdom? Does it mean the mind, the mental aspect of it?
I think Geshe-la uses it in that sense. He's wrong.
Is it the 8 limbs?
Yeah, it is. He uses it in that term, and I think in the Pradipika you'll find it in that sense, I think. But Raja Yoga means Patanjali. If you say Raja Yoga and you say Patanjali's Yoga, they're dinchik, they're the same. That is there anything that's Raja Yoga that's not Patanjali? You can say no. Raja Yoga just means Patanjali's Yoga. There's more to it than the 8 limbs, but so Raja Yoga and Patanjali's Yoga, same thing. Okay? So when you hear Raja Yoga, you can think one book. That's it. Tradition. And I'm sure you can find, as with everything, different opinions, but that's like pretty straightforward tradition. So it's the system of Patanjali. So in the Yoga Sutras, the Yoga Sutras is an interesting book. Patanjali doesn't waste any time. He starts the first, there's 4 chapters, he starts the first chapter for the smartest people. He's like, I'm not going to waste their time, and kind of slowly build up. It's like, so the first chapter is incredibly difficult, and all the practices start, if you have samadhi, great, you can do chapter 1. If you don't have samadhi, go to chapter 2. And he's like, I'm not going to waste the smartest people's time by putting the best stuff at the end. It's like, if you got samadhi, great, we'll start there. Chapter 2, you don't have samadhi, okay, we'll do some other stuff. Like the 8 limbs, or Kriya Yoga. Kind of like stuff to get your mind pure enough that you can be in samadhi, that you can do the practices of chapter 1. So that's kind of where we're at. And the next one is Jnana Yoga, which is more traditionally like the wisdom yoga. And we're not there yet, so we'll leave that one. So there's your progression. Take out the garbage, give away ice cream, have some devotion about giving away ice cream. Patanjali. And that's Hatha Yoga Anushasana. That's where we're at. We're at Raja Yoga. And eventually we get to Jnana Yoga. Okay? So I was at the Buskers Festival on Granville a couple times, and it was so cool. Loved that. But they would kind of do like part of their act and then like do something to get the crowd to cheer. So it kind of like, that's presentation number 1 on Hatha. Thank you very much. Okay, Hatha. So the second sense of Hatha means like, Hatha means then, but it also has a connotation of and then. Meaning like, or and now. It means now, so and now. Like something's come before. Geshe talks about it like something's come before. In the sense of, why are you coming to this thing called Raja Yoga? You know, if life was going perfectly for you, you probably wouldn't. You know, life's perfect. I'm not going to spend time reading my book. Maybe. You know, for me, I hope when life is perfect, I'm not going to have to go study. I'd rather be at the Buskers Festival or something, or the beach, or whatever. Like, I'm not going to be searching for a spiritual thing if I'm totally happy, because that's the idea of spiritual things, is to be totally happy. So I'm already there. I don't need to take the boat with me after I cross the river with the boat. So, in a sense, like, and now is like, you're coming to this spiritual thing because something's not right in your life. You're trying to fill some void. So, and now is like, things aren't going perfectly. The worldly world has been problematic. Samsara has reared its ugly head. There's an experience of some sort of pain at one point that makes you think, maybe Patanjali's got some sort of answer for me. Maybe there's an answer in yoga that I can be a little happier in my life. So there's this sense of going from not having a path to going to have a path. And now that you've tried a bunch of stuff that didn't really seem to work, now Hatha Yoga, Anusasana. Now let's talk yoga. Now that you've kind of tried to externally manipulate the puzzle pieces of the world, like if I just had the right job, and I just had the right amount of vacation, and if I just had the right partner, and if I just had the right look, and if I could just like get all the puzzle pieces together, I'd be happy. Like once you've done that enough and you realize it ain't gonna work, then maybe if you get to that point, then you might look for something spiritual. Doesn't seem like that's working. Or for me, and a lot of people, maybe it was just like, wow, 15 years of hedonism didn't quite do it. Like I've thoroughly exhausted that method for happiness, and I'm not. So let's try something else. And now, let's try something else. Okay? Having the right partner and job and money and vacation and blah, 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 I'm still not fully happy. So now, let's see what this yoga thing is about. So there's some sort of renunciation from the things that I normally think will make me happy. So what brings us from not having a spiritual path to a spiritual path, you could say, is renunciation. So what is renunciation? What is it that we're having renunciation for? What is renunciation?
To give up.
To give up on what? I mean, if you're giving up on everything, then you wouldn't bother taking something up, because you would have given up on it. So what are you specifically giving up on?
If I was Catholic, I'd give up fish on Fridays, or no, give up red meat on Fridays.
So you'd have renunciation for red meat on Fridays. What else is renunciation in terms of bringing us from not having a path to a path, other than fish on Fridays, red meat on Fridays? I mean, that might be it for somebody.
Of the cause of suffering.
Renouncing the cause of our suffering, which is...
well, we've touched the subject with like having a selfish attitude, or thinking that things are coming in a certain way when they're not, like having not quite the right view on reality.
Okay, so renouncing the old view of reality.
Giving up on the grasping to worldly things that we think are going to make us happy. Like the things you've mentioned, the job, the perfect partner, material things. Doesn't mean we don't have them, but giving up on thinking that they're self-existently going to make us happy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that if someone gets renunciation, maybe they don't know that yet. Like maybe you could say, okay, I'm going to renounce my suffering. I'm going to renounce. You don't really think like that. It's like you just, what am I going to do, or something like that. And then hopefully, if you're lucky, I guess, and then you land in front of somebody making some sense.
Yeah. I think the Buddha did that, right?
Yeah.
He renounced the palace and all of the riches for what? He didn't really know. This isn't it. I know this isn't it. So I'm giving up on that. Yeah. Renunciation is sometimes talked about as a turning away from. And when you turn away from something, you turn towards something else. Like if you let go of something, your hands are free to receive something else, right? So in the Yoga Sutra, it's Abhyasa Vairagyam Ta Nirodha. So that there's a renunciation of that, and then your hands are empty to receive abhyasa, some sort of practice. It's kind of cool. When there's a turning away, there's a turning towards. So you can't, one has to come before the other, right? Traditional Buddhist definition of renunciation, course 1 or 2, which someone just taught recently. Pretty much. I think it's something like having a thought night and day to get out of samsara. Like when you night and day think of, I want to get out of a world of suffering, then that's renunciation. A little different than the Yoga Sutras, and some of the answers that people gave out are more in line with the Yoga Sutras, but that's like our party line. When you're like night and day thinking, my happiness isn't going to come from putting the external pieces of the puzzle together, there needs to be something more. Getting out of the way that I am creating suffering in my world, or the fact that this world is, like we talked about last time, the 4 Arya truths, everything is suffering. I want to get out of that. I want to get out of everything is suffering. When you have that thought constantly, 24/7, renunciation. That's a pretty high bar, right? I was thinking about it in a different way. I had a partner that she had a dog. It was a big Doberman. So when I was in the relationship, I got into this relationship with her. She'd been with the dog a long time, like 13 years or something. There's a definite order in the house. Like there was the dog, and then there's me. Like I was not on top. The dog was number 1. And she was amazing with her dog. She always fed the dog first, and the dog always ate organic stuff. We'd make the dog a proper meal, and it was just, it was a very beautiful thing to watch somebody treat another being so well. And so one day we had to take the dog to the vet. And so we go to the vet, bring the dog in, sit the dog down, it's on the blanket, and the vet's explaining what we're going to do, what she's going to do. And she said, the first needle will stop the pain, and the second needle will stop her heart. And I had to watch my partner's world kind of collapse. And watch her have to put down her best friend and not be able to do anything. Just kind of impotent to do anything. Just had to sit there as she watched, as her world kind of crumbled. Well, there was a time I asked a friend what brought her to the Dharma. She said when she was very young, she came home from school and found her mom in her mom's bed. Her mom was dead. And what had happened was, she was like 10 or something. Her mom had gone down. Someone had broken the house. She had heard it. Mom had gone down. People had broken the house, saw the mom, grabbed a pipe and smashed her head and beat her to death and took her upstairs and put her in bed. And this woman, 10-year-old, came home, and that was what she found after school. She's like, that's what brought me to Dharma. Seeing my mom having her head smashed in with a pipe. And there was a woman I knew that we were having a conversation, and I said, what's the most scared you've ever been in your life? She's this beautiful woman. She's very joyful and carefree and dancing and free spirit. She said, confronting my dad for raping me when I was young. And I just was like so mad and so sick that imagining this beautiful little girl, that the person that was supposed to be protecting her and loving her the most was abusing her in such a horrible way. Or there was a time I was in prison and I was in the yard, and I saw the guy come up. Somehow he'd gotten a rope, like a cord, into the yard, and he came up behind me. And I kind of saw him out of the corner of my eye. He had this rope, and he went down to put it around my neck, and I ducked at the last second, and it skipped off my head, and I got up and turned around. He was one of the Black Power members. He had two fists tattooed on his cheeks, and it was him and you know, like 3 or 4 of his buddies. So then, you know, lucky for me, there's kind of like this horn that goes, like the yard ended, and we have to go back in to the main wing. So he just kind of laughed, and we went in, and I asked somebody, you know, what is he in for? Who is that guy? What is he in for? And he was arrested for, some guy was pissed off at his wife and hired him to go and cut his wife's finger off. So they go to the house, he gets out of the car, goes in the house, grabs his wife, slams her hand down, cuts her finger off, goes out to the car, gives the guy the finger. And he says, like, you're an idiot. I told you to, I don't know if that's her finger, I told you to cut off the ring finger with our wedding ring on it. So he goes back in, grabs the wife again, pulls her hand down, and chops off her finger with the wedding ring. Goes back out to the car, now give me my money. $50. That's how much it costs you to go have someone cut off somebody's fingers. $50. So I know I've lived a pretty fortunate life. My life has been pretty, I don't live in somewhere crazy. I have looked down the barrel of a shotgun, but I have, you know, things have been okay. I have had someone pull a knife on me, but it's not crazy. I don't live in a war-torn country. I know my life has been pretty protected, pretty good. But I didn't take long today to come up with some pretty horrible stories of what I've experienced in my life. Let alone the stress of just, Joel and I were talking about just the stress of not knowing what I should do in my life. Renunciation is like, in yoga, is like an idea of it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to live in a world where people are cutting off people's fingers for $50. There's a renunciation, like, is violence a result? If it's a result, there's a cause for it. Can I get rid of the causes for that result? You know, that's the big question in yoga. That's our belief. Yeah. Violence is a result. There's a cause of my perception of violence, which is my previous acts of violence. Can I get rid of violence in the world? Yoga says, yeah. Suffering. It's Hayam Dukam Anat. We're getting way far ahead of ourselves. This is like in chapter 2 in 15 years when we get to chapter 2. One word at a time. Hayam Dukam Anagatam. The suffering that we're avoiding is future suffering. I can change my reality. I can change my perceptions of reality by how I act today. That's the shtick of Patanjali. And then you have to kind of think about that. Whether that's, we were debating that. That was when Joel and my brother and I walked here, that was what we talked about. Do I believe that? It's pretty radical. Can I change my perception of the world through my behaviors? Can I renounce? In the Yoga Sutras, renunciation, Geshe describes it as renunciation for renunciation for solid things, thinking things appear solidly, thinking things are self-existent. Like we have renunciation for thinking that things are self-existent. And if we could lose that idea that qualities of things are coming at me instead of from me, my perception of an event, a person, a thing, whatever. What were we talking about? Just a jerk. Or unreasonableness. That was what we were talking about. Is unreasonableness from a situation coming at me, or is my mind somehow taking all of bits and pieces and making this idea unreasonableness and slapping it on to a situation? Renunciation in the Yoga Sutras is saying, I renounce the idea that unreasonableness comes towards me. Unreasonableness comes from me. Yet, I have some sort of seed ripening in my mind to see this situation as unreasonable. And I renounce any other view of it. 40 minutes. So, Hatha Yoga Anushasanam and now means that there's something that's bringing us to the path. There's something that's bringing us to Patanjali. There's something that's bringing us from not having a path to having a path. What is it? What is that thing? You could say renunciation. Renunciation to what? There's a lot of different ways you can think about that. One of it is just kind of waking up to reality. Like when I talked about 5 uncomfortable things, people got uncomfortable pretty quick. It's kind of an uncomfortable discussion to have. People got a little bit, not everybody, but there's a certain amount of squirminess in the room. Don't really like to admit those things are going on. So part of renunciation is having a good, hard look at my reality and saying, wow, there's some really up things going on. There's some horrible, horrible things going on. My life is not perfect. There is suffering in my world. Like you kind of have to get in touch with that aspect of it to have some renunciation for it. So, if there is suffering in my world, can I do something about it? Well, I hope so. One way to look at that would be like, what's the cause of the suffering? Yoga philosophy says the cause of that suffering is the little camcorder in your mind watching what you do, say, and think. That's generating your perceptual world, generating the things in the world. Yeah, hayam dukam anagatam. You can, anagatam is the future, you can stop the suffering that comes in the future by stopping creating the causes for it. That's radical. And that, to me, was a cool enough, like we talked about last week, that idea that that might be possible was cool and radical enough for me to be willing to study more deeply. and in fact go into retreat for 3 years and think about it. Because yeah, I mean, like I talked about last week, I believe very strongly that we can get to a place where we don't have kleshas in our mind, where we don't have a thing that is bothering our state of mind. Where there's no anger, there's no jealousy, there's no pride, there's no lust, there's those things we can get rid of in our mind. And that's a worthwhile idea to me to pursue fully. So first thing, renunciation. Second thing is going to be bodhicitta. So, what would it take? What kind of seed would it take? What kind of an action would it take to create a world where I have no reason to go like frown and I meditated so hard in retreat. I have these new crease lines. Like I saw that was like I looked in a mirror one day in retreat. It's like, oh my God, I'm just taking this way too serious. I've got like this permanent. It's like, I'm supposed to be, all relaxed. I'm in 3-year retreat, and I developed this new permanent freaking crease line because I'm meditating so much. So, what kind of a seed would it take? Can we get to that place? In the Christian tradition, it says, there are those of us here who will not taste death before we reach the kingdom of heaven. And I asked, my brother and I, we have a cousin named Grant, who's a minister, and I asked him one day, this is this verse, there are those of us here who will not taste death before we reach the kingdom of heaven. Is that a literal verse, or do you need to kind of interpret that like, can you reach heaven before you die? And he's like, no, you gotta die first. Like the progression is death, heaven. So you have to interpret that. It's not a literal statement by Jesus. Flip over to Buddhism, and we're like, no, that's literal. You don't have to die before you reach heaven. You can reach nirvana, heaven, before death, and that's kind of the goal. So it's kind of funny that we take the Bible literally on that, and they take it figuratively. So what kind of seed would you have to create in your mind to have results so powerful that you're never having any reason to be afflicted? It has to be infinite. So what makes something infinite?
Aspects of it all-encompassing.
Just define infinite with infinite.
Like every situation, and every being, not leaving anything out.
So doing a deed with that infinite scope.
Infinite scope, and I guess it's like a continuity, infinite continuity of doing it.
So you have to do it infinitely.
You have to wish infinite goodness for infinite beings in infinite time.
It's got to be big. I agree. That's in year 7. That's about verse 20. Something like that. Geshe taught me this once, a long time ago. he said kind of the same thing. For once, he didn't use a pen. He said, imagine a leaf. Like if there was a tree behind me and there's a leaf, like picture where the edge of the leaf is, where the leaf meets the sky. Okay? Is there a line where there's green leaf and blue sky? Yeah. Like if there was no line, you couldn't distinguish between the two, right? And the line must have width. If the line didn't have width, you couldn't see it. You couldn't see a line. If the line doesn't have any width, you can't see it. Something that doesn't have width, you can't see it. So the line has width. So where's the edge of the leaf that meets the sky? Well, it's on the outer edge of the line that has width, right? It's like the outer edge of the line. Well, does the outer edge of the line have width? Well, yeah, it has width, or you wouldn't be able to see it. Of course it does. So where does the leaf meet the sky? Well, it's the outer edge of the line. Right? Well, does that have width? Well, yeah, of course. Otherwise, then it's the outer edge of the. And you get the idea fairly quickly that edge is a concept in your mind. The edge of the leaf, where the leaf meets the sky, is an idea. The edge of things, there is no edge of things in that sense. The edge of things is an idea created by your mind. So how do you create a seed that powerful? You need to find the edge of your kindness. Like how far will your kindness go? Meditations, people meditate all the time and maybe don't get very far. Or people can meditate very profoundly and never use it for something useful. People can debate very well and end up with a lot of pride. People can espouse great yoga philosophy, but it doesn't mean they're any less, it doesn't necessarily mean they're any happier. Like, what are the seeds that make something that powerful happen for you? Where's the edge of your kindness? How far does your kindness go? So Vishla taught, some of us, we're the limit of our kindness, the edge of our kindness extends as far as our mouth. Like I like to put junky food in my mouth or smoke cigarettes. So I'm kind to my mouth, but not the rest of my body. The edge of my kindness goes as far as my mouth. And I kind of ignore that. I just want to, taste good. I know it's bad for me, but what the hell, it tastes good. Like the extent of my kindness reaches all the way to my taste buds. So how far can our kindness go? Well, hopefully, like I can, sometimes, I can get a little bit more expansive. Sex is another one. Like for a little bit of gratification, to gratify a small part of our body, we're willing to take huge risks and huge consequences for a short-term result. Like my kindness kind of goes to like, not very much for not very long. And I'm willing to like take huge risks to do that for that amount of pleasure. Sometimes though my kindness goes to my whole body. I take very good care of my body and I do yoga and I meditate and I take a shower and I clean myself and my kindness can extend to my whole body. How far does my kindness go? I can extend it to my whole body. This bag of skin. I can extend my kindness to this bag of skin. and we're good at extending our kindness to, maybe someone that we're close to. Like if I share a roof and a bed with somebody, then I'm willing to extend my kindness to them as well. Like I kind of want my partner to have nice things too, and nice clothes, and I'm willing to extend my kindness to the person I share a bed with. Or to like a relative or a relationship, or like a child, right? Like in the Buddhist text, and I think it's not a huge debate, but they say like the love for a mother for her child is the most powerful, amazing love there is. Sorry, close second, I guess. But like that love is like, there's something special about that. It is the most profound, powerful, purest love. But maybe it's also the most selfish if it's just reserved for that one person. It's also kind of the most selfish love if you're unwilling to extend the limit of your kindness. How far will your kindness go? Like, if I ask people like, hey, your child's hungry, would you feed it? Well, what about if the kid next door was hungry? Well, yeah, of course I would feed the kid next door. I'm not a monster. I'd feed the kid next door, of course. Of course I would. If the kid next door was hungry, I would go feed the kid, like my own. What if that kid was across the street? Sure, maybe across the street. What about across the town? Maybe across the city or across the state. Like what if that kid was across the world? How far does my kindness go? The world's very small now. Like I can give us the names of kids at Sarah Monastery Starwood pretty quick. Not a big deal. We can't just kind of claim like that's too far away. I don't really know them. They speak a different language. I can go online and press iTranslate, and the world's too small. How far will my kindness go? Like if there's an accident in front of my house, if my child is in an accident in front of my house, a car accident, I will run to help them. But what if it's not? What if it's a stranger? I run. Yeah, I'll run to help them. I'm going to help them. Well, what if they were different than me? Like, what if they had different color of skin, which is, doesn't matter. Like, but how different? Like, well, what if instead of having 2 legs, they had 4 legs? Would you still run out and help them? Or are we willing to eat them and wear them for our clothing? Like, it's very clear in retreat. You see the suffering of animals, and I don't think it's not a huge mental leap to say that animals suffer and have feelings. How far will my kindness go? Am I willing to extend my kindness to something I'm pretty good at people with 2 legs and an accident inside my house? How am I with people with 4 legs? For me, how far can I push the limits of my kindness? Or what if the child was small? Well, how small? Size doesn't really matter. I'll help them. But what if they're like a termite and they're eating my house? Or they're just like a mosquito? Does the edge of my kindness extend to small things? Or is it just reserved for big things that I share a bed with? Like how far am I willing to extend my kindness? Because the edge of our kindness is edge of our capacity to experience magical things. The way we limit our kindness and our compassion is what limits our perception of the world. Limitless. There's been, quickly able to get to people like, Buddha didn't stop everyone from being hungry. Jesus couldn't do it. Martin Luther King couldn't do it. Like, who the hell am I? I can't do that. I can't go feed everybody. All these great beings couldn't do it. What am I going to do? It's not the ability to feed everybody that makes somebody great. Jesus isn't great, Buddha's not great because they managed to do those things. What's the woman's name? Hands up for Africa?
Mama Mercy.
Yeah. She hasn't eradicated hunger. That's not what makes her great. It's her willingness to try that makes her great. That willingness to try to push the edge of our kindness is what produces what produces, maybe that's what it has to take to produce such a profound result of never having to go like that anymore, never being afflicted anymore. Never being angry, never being jealous, never being prideful. Can I push myself that far? Like, am I willing to be like Mother Teresa, who at the end of her life, when someone said, how do you do it? How do you be around so much suffering all the time? You're in like the worst country, in the worst part of the worst country, dealing with the worst of the worst people in the worst part of the worst country. How do you do that? She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. There is no more intense suffering than right here, and you've been doing it your whole life. Like, how do you deal with it? And she's like, when I look at people, all I see is the face of God. Maybe it's the edge of our kindness that limits us. Maybe we need to tip the scales of me first and the gimme-gimmes a little bit. One of me and 8 billion of others. Push my edge a little more than 1 and 8 billion. So, and maybe we need to push, Hatha Yoga Anushasana, 20 minutes. We have, and now yoga. Now going from not having a path to having a path. Certain things need to come first. Renunciation. Maybe like recognizing that things aren't going perfectly and in a very real and honest way, and thinking if what we're doing is going to change that, if there's any sort of reason to hope that our chosen path is going to yield a different result, or should we start to look at some sort of entertain some ideas that doesn't have to be like that. And then having this idea of turning away from the things that I think might give me happiness that haven't for 40 years and turning towards some sort of different idea and being open to them. Turning away from things being self-existent and having qualities that are coming at me to the idea of that I'm the master of my own universe, for better and for worse. Through the process of there being a camcorder, recording all the things I'm saying, doing, and thinking, that having some sort of connection to how I perceive my world. So, renunciation, bodhicitta. How would I get to? There are those of us here who will not taste death before we reach the kingdom of heaven. How can I get to a place where I am never having anything that disturbs the peace of my mind? What is the most powerful thing? Maybe it's trying to have a radically different view of the edge of our kindness. And seeing that there is no limit. There is no edge to a leaf. There is no edge to our kindness. That's an idea. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be what Misha described. It can be that. It sounds kind of unrealistic. Well, you have to do this towards unlimited beings for unlimited time and wish them unlimited things. And it's like, well, okay, great. Well, it sounds nice. But maybe we can be radical to think, maybe that is possible. Or maybe at least I can tip the me first and the gimme scales. And I'll start with something a little more, something I can bite off a little easier. But there is no limit. The edge is an idea. The edge, the limit of my capacity for kindness is just an idea. Renunciation, bodhicitta. Third thing we need to get to Patanjali's yoga. Wisdom. So, three principal paths: renunciation, bodhicitta, correct view. So we've kind of been talking about this, but I got 15 minutes, so we'll go through it. Remember Chicago? The Devine's dog?
Say that again?
Chicago, the Devine's dog?
Yes.
When we grew up, our neighbors were called, their name were the Devines. They had a big old slobbery boxer. And we'd play hockey on the street, and it was one person's job to, they didn't get to play, they got to go get a ball, shoot the ball down the street, Chicago would go get it, and bring it back, so that Chicago wouldn't disrupt the game. Someone needed to keep the dog busy. So someone would shoot the ball down and come back, shoot the ball down and come back. And you had to have a bucket of water because the thing slobbered like crazy. And eventually that wouldn't work because the dog would come running onto the into the game and grab my stick. I'm like, Chicago, let go of my hockey stick. Chicago would be like, it's not a hockey stick, it's a chew toy. It's like, let go of my stick, let go of my stick. And the dog's like, it's something to chew on, it's a chew toy. And so we'd have this back and forth argument about stick, chew toy, stick, chew toy, stick, chew toy. And eventually you'd kind of let him have the stick and he'd go run off, he'd go get a new one. Right, so whose perception is right in that situation? Is it a hockey stick or something to chew on? There's this ingrained belief for me that I'm right. It's made in the hockey stick factory. It says CCM on it. It says CCM hockey stick. It's a hockey stick. But Chicago's like, no, CCM makes perfect chew toys. It came from the chew toy factory, and CCM happens to be my favorite. There's nothing coming from that stick saying, I'm a hockey stick, I'm a hockey stick, I'm a hockey stick. if there were, Chicago would either be wrong or see it as a hockey stick. So we have to argue with ourselves about whether the dog is just simply wrong or not. That's our party line, right? The dog is wrong. It's not a hockey stick or a chew toy. But we say there's something in my mind, because of my past deeds, that's making me conceptualize this object as a beautiful, awesome, amazing hockey stick. The stick is empty of any sort of self-existent thing. My mind projects on it hockey stick. What school of Buddhism did I just present?
Functionalist?
No, I don't think the functional school would say my mind makes the hockey stick. Mind only. That's because
there's still something with it.
Like a stick.
Like a raw material.
Something that you're projecting onto.
Yeah. They would say there's a Shenwan hockey stick. That there's a Shenwan stick. There's a Shenwan. It's like a other power. It's like a changing thing. And my mind has this idea, which is called a kuntak, which gets slapped onto the Shenwan, and I have a hockey stick. How would you say that? So the whole time Geshe-la teaches the pen thing, if he only goes that far, it's not Prasangika. It's not the highest school of Buddhism. It took me 10 years of hearing about the pen to click into that. And if you listen, he doesn't stop there. What does he say? How do you make that Prasangika?
As soon as you go further with the object. Like, as soon as he starts breaking it down and he starts talking about parts and he starts unraveling the very thing he's holding in front of you, then you start to move away from mind only.
So there's not even any sort of stick that you're projecting a hockey stick onto, because stick is also a conceptualization. We could debate that. I'm going to say strictly Prasangika, you would have to say there's no hockey stick that exists other than through name and term, other than how you perceive it and what you call it. There is no such thing as hockey stick other than how you think of it and what you call it, name and term. The reason I bring that all up is because if you didn't understand all of that, John is going to teach it in course 15 in...
Course 13?
Nope.
15.
Yep. Soon.
Okay. Oh, soon, yes. True.
So if that at all sounded interesting, which hopefully it did, because it's, to me, such a cool thing to spend my time with. Coming soon to a Dharma Center near you. And I kind of wanted to encourage people to keep going. Like we talked about the community last week and the importance of a community at Three Jewels. How in my experience with all of the disasters that had happened at Diamond Mountain, or the hard times, or the whatever you want to call it, people that didn't have community had a hard time. People that didn't have spiritual friends flailed badly. value of doing some seva for 3 jewels. For me, when I was at Diamond Mountain, that felt incredibly powerful. Being at something at the very beginning, which can last a long time and contribute in a very profound way to the goodness in the world or to the health of one person. It's been amazing to hear some people's stories here. What 3 Jewels has done for some of the people in this room is incredible. What some of the people have done in this room is incredible. And I believe that there's some teachers here that have integrated the teachings in a very profound way. And I know John's planning on taking people through the next 3 courses. They're priceless, in my opinion. And I would encourage you to don't miss that opportunity. Whatever you can do, I think John can teach those courses in a very profound way, and I think they can change your life. I know there's some people thinking about doing the higher teachings after that. And there's some confusion about that. How to do that, is it the right time? Who do I do that with? And those are all really important questions to be dealing with. But you have to deal with them. That is the next step. You have to get there. I really believe that. Like, the tantric teachings are very, very profound. And we should have some faith in the teachings, and we should have some faith in the teacher, and we should have some faith in ourselves as practitioners. There's an incredible community here to go through these teachings, and some incredible teachers to take you through these teachings. So I just wanted to encourage people to do that. And it's a big responsibility for a teacher. John and I talked about it a lot. We had dinner the other night. And good luck.
Thanks, Earle.
But I believe you're in good hands, and I wish everybody here luck. And maybe it's not luck, just have some renunciation, and have some bodhicitta, and have some correct view, and have some seva, and have some karma. You know, the path is there. That's not. We all have a billion practices. We could just kind of keep the focus. Keep going. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, please keep going. This place is beautiful. I came in here. When you brought me in, when Leonard brought me in, I just stepped in, and it was like very powerful. It was very cool. I don't feel like that. I don't pick up on energy like that. But it was just very powerful for me to be here. It feels like there's cool things going on. So please keep going. And then I have 4 minutes. So I hope to come back to Vancouver in December. So it'd be nice if we can hang out in some aspect. John and I are cooking up some ideas as far as teachings and stuff like that. So I hope these last 2 these 2 days have been beneficial, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for helping me get set up. Thank you for being the contact person at first. Thank you for letting me stay at your house. Thank you for letting me stay at your house. Thank you. You know, a lot of people very, very kind to me. I appreciate it. Kind of felt like a new home. Like Vancouver. I grew up in Vancouver, and the first time ever I got back into Vancouver, it didn't feel like home. First time ever I got downtown, it was like that feeling of being in a new city. It just wasn't home. And now I kind of found it a new home, so I appreciate it. Yeah, I didn't do it, 3 minutes. It's close.
Well, maybe people have questions.
That's a good idea. 2 minutes, questions. Maybe we'll just do a 2-minute dedication. So, if something was inspiring, or there's something you want to kind of take hold of, or some sort of something you want to work towards, just kind of burn it in your mind. Give it to Ishvara, the great distributor, and he will look after it. We will get what we need. And think, may everybody get what they need. So maybe next time we'll do the second word. And review it, right? Like, don't just let Seva go as a concept. Some people have Seva down, like, it's easy, I think, when you have kids. It's just like, that's what you do. Don't let the concept stay on your notepad or your computer or the whiteboard. Right? Take the concept and apply it. And it's just not very useful.
You see something wrong? So there's, I don't know if you know if this is a Buddhist thing or not, but since I've been studying this stuff, I've been told quite a few times that if you ask the teacher 3 times, they have to come back. They don't really have a choice. Is that like a magnet? Something it's like a magnet, right? If you say it heartfully 3 times, it's like it pulls Earle back. It's like a tractor beam. So if we say, please come back, Earle, and teach us 3 times in a row, it's like a tractor beam. So it's like pulls him back. So I'm going to say, please, Earle, come back to teach us. Please, Earle, come back to teach us. Please, Earle, come back to teach us.
Okay, we'll see if it works.